A father and his daughter set off on a hot air balloon ride, but never came home. They remained missing without a single trace, as if they had simply vanished into thin air along with their aircraft. But 6 years later, a hiker stumbles upon something shocking buried in the woods, disturbing evidence that would change everything. The early morning fog hung thick over Eldonmarais, a small rural town nestled in the Pacific Northwest. Through the haze, the imposing silhouette of Eldon Ridge National Preserve loomed in the distance. A vast, rugged wilderness of dense woods, sheer cliffs, and deep valleys that had swallowed its share of secrets over the years. Lena Rowe had barely opened her eyes when her phone rang, its shrill tone piercing the quiet of dawn. The digital clock on her nightstand read 6:17 a.m. Outside her window, the sun had just begun to peek through the fog, casting everything in a pale, ghostly light. Lena reached for her phone, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the caller ID. Detective Roy Beckett. 6 years had passed since she had lost her family, her 11-year-old daughter Mira, and her husband Daniel, in what most people considered a tragic hot air balloon accident. 6 years of hollow days and sleepless nights. 6 years of wondering if they might still be out there somewhere. Hello? Her voice was hoarse from sleep, but her mind was instantly alert. "Mrs. Rowe, I apologize for calling at this hour," Detective Beckett said, his voice grave. "But we have an important update on your case." Lena sat up straight, clutching the phone tighter. "What is it?" "A hiker made a discovery in the woods yesterday evening," he explained. "We believe we've found the hot air balloon that your husband and daughter were in on the day of their disappearance." The world seemed to tilt around her. After 6 years of nothing, no leads, no closure, suddenly this. "Where?" she managed to ask. "Deep in Eldon Ridge National Preserve. I can give you the exact coordinates, but it's quite remote. We'd like you to come to the scene as soon as possible. Can you make it?" "Yes," Lena said without hesitation. "I'll be there shortly." She jotted down the location and ended the call, her hands trembling. Just as she set her phone down, it rang again. This time, it was Grant Miles. Grant was more than just her husband's business partner. He had been Daniel's best friend since elementary school. Together, they had founded Skyreach Balloons, turning their shared passion for flight into a successful enterprise. After Daniel's disappearance, Grant had been a pillar of support for Lena, helping her navigate both her grief and the practical matters of life without Daniel. "Lena, I just heard from Roy," Grant said when she answered, "about the discovery." "Yes, I'm getting ready to go there now." "Let me pick you up," he offered. "It's early, the fog is thick, and the roads are slippery. We're both heading to the same place anyway." Lena accepted gratefully. It wasn't an unusual offer. Grant had often helped out over the years, both before and after the disappearance. She dressed quickly, pulling on jeans, a sweater, and sturdy boots suitable for hiking. By the time she finished a hasty cup of coffee, Grant's silver SUV was pulling into her driveway. The drive to the preserve took only about 20 minutes, but the atmosphere between them was heavy with apprehension. Grant, normally talkative, was unusually quiet, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. "What do you think they found?" Lena finally asked, breaking the silence. Grant shook his head. "I don't know, but whatever it is, we'll face it together." Detective Beckett met them at a small ranger station at the edge of the preserve. From there, they followed him on foot, trekking deep into the woods. The path was rough, occasionally non-existent, forcing them to climb over fallen logs and navigate around dense thickets. "How much further?" Lena asked after they had been walking for nearly 40 minutes. "Not much more," Detective Beckett replied. "The site is far off any established trails. That's why it wasn't discovered until now." When they finally reached the scene, Lena's breath caught in her throat. Before them was a large area cordoned off with yellow police tape. In the center was an enormous hole in the ground, at least 15 feet in diameter and several feet deep. Inside the excavation lay the unmistakable remains of a hot air balloon, the colorful fabric spread out across the tarp on the dirt, the wicker basket lying on its side, and several metal propane canisters scattered nearby. Police officers and crime scene technicians moved methodically around the site, photographing everything, taking measurements, and collecting samples. The balloon's once vibrant fabric was now faded and torn, caked with dirt and decaying leaves. Detective Beckett led them to a man standing near the edge of the excavation. He was tall and lean, dressed in hiking gear, with a German shepherd sitting attentively by his side. "This is Caleb Marsh," the detective said. "He and his dog, Ranger, discovered the site yesterday." Caleb nodded politely to Lena. "I'm sorry about your family, ma'am." "Can you tell me how you found this?" Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb gestured to his dog. "Ranger is a retired K-9 officer. I adopted him a couple of years ago. We were hiking off-trail yesterday when he suddenly started barking and digging at this spot. He's trained to detect human remains, so I called the police immediately, thinking someone might be buried here." Detective Beckett took over the explanation. "When we started excavating, we found the balloon buried under a tarp. The ground above it had already grown over with vegetation, small trees and bushes, but they're younger than the surrounding forest. The way everything was carefully placed and buried suggests someone was trying to hide evidence." Lena stepped closer to the edge of the pit, her eyes fixed on the balloon. "That's it," she said softly. "I recognize the pattern. Daniel and I designed it together. Those yellow and orange streaked with black. That's our balloon." She turned to the detective, hope and fear warring in her expression. Did you find any bodies?" The dog smelled something. Detective Beckett shook his head. "We've excavated this entire area and found no human remains. What Ranger detected was the residual propane gas from the canisters. They were buried with the balloon." Lena wrapped her arms around herself, processing this information. "So this means they didn't just disappear in a bad weather accident? Someone buried the balloon deliberately?" "We can't be 100% certain yet," the detective cautioned. "Our initial investigation did reveal reports of sudden, unpredictable weather that day, which could have caused a crash. But this evidence strongly suggests this wasn't just a natural accident. Someone tried to cover it up." Hope flared in Lena's chest. "So my husband and daughter, they could still be alive? They could be out there somewhere?" The detective's expression was carefully neutral. "We're pursuing all possibilities, Mrs. Rowe." Lena wiped away tears, trying to maintain her composure as she stared at the balloon that had carried her family away from her. Around them, forensic technicians continued their meticulous work, documenting every aspect of the scene. Grant, who had been unusually quiet since their arrival, finally approached the edge of the pit. His face was pale, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the wreckage. He took out his phone and began taking pictures, but Lena noticed he wasn't photographing the scene as a whole. Instead, he zoomed in and focused on a small metal plate attached to the basket, the serial number. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Insurance," Grant replied simply. "These balloons are expensive. I'll need to document everything." Lena nodded absently, not thinking much of it. Grant was always the practical one, the businessman who handled the operational side, while Daniel had been the face of the company, the charismatic figure who attracted clients and built relationships. Now, Grant was busy on his phone, presumably sending the photos to headquarters. Lena didn't want to be suspicious of him. After all, he had been nothing but supportive since the disappearance. She knew he had a business to run and responsibilities to manage. A forensic technician called them over to point out traces of blood on the wicker basket, as well as signs of damage that couldn't be explained by a simple crash landing. "See these tears in the fabric?" the technician explained. "And these marks on the basket? They suggest not just damage from a fall, but signs of struggle, almost as if someone was fighting inside the basket." Lena's mind raced with terrible possibilities. Had someone attacked her family mid-flight? Had Mira panicked during a crash and Daniel tried to restrain her for her safety? Or had something even more sinister occurred? "We'll process everything here thoroughly," Detective Beckett assured her. "You can go home if you'd like. We'll update you as soon as we have more information." He turned to Grant. "Mr. Miles will need to arrange a meeting with your staff at Skyreach headquarters, depending on what we find here. Can you make that happen?" Grant nodded. "Of course. Just let me know when—" With one last look at the balloon that had once carried her family, Lena turned away, her mind swirling with questions that still had no answers. With Detective Beckett's permission, Lena and Grant left the excavation site. The hiker, Caleb Marsh, and his dog Ranger had already exchanged information with the police and departed as well. The morning fog had started to lift, but the air remained cool and damp as they made their way back through the woods to Grant's SUV. "I can drive you home," Grant offered as they reached the vehicle. During the drive back to Eldenbury, Grant reached over and briefly squeezed Lena's hand. "Try not to worry too much," he said, his voice gentle. "The police will figure this out. They'll update us when they know more." Lena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Her mind was still at the excavation site with the balloon that had carried her family away 6 years ago. When they arrived at her modest 2-story house, Grant pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. "Would it be all right if I came in for a bit?" he asked. "I need to complete some insurance forms, and I could use your living room table. I'll even make you breakfast while I'm at it." Lena didn't think twice about the request. Grant had been in their home countless times over the years, both before the disappearance and after. He and Daniel had spent many evenings cooking together in her kitchen, sharing stories and laughs. "Of course," she said. "You know where everything is. I didn't get a chance to wash up this morning, so I'll go freshen up." Grant followed her inside and headed straight for the kitchen. "Don't worry about a thing," he called after her. "Breakfast will be ready by the time you come down." "You don't have to do that," Lena protested half-heartedly. "It's no trouble," Grant insisted. "I've cooked here with Daniel many times. I know my way around your kitchen." Lena made her way upstairs to her bedroom, closing the door behind her. In the bathroom, she leaned heavily against the sink, finally allowing herself to break down. The sobs came silently at first, then with growing intensity as the reality of the morning's discovery hit her anew. After a few minutes, she managed to compose herself enough to splash cold water on her face. She reached for her phone and sent a text to her best friend, Nona, who lived several states away, but had remained a constant source of support. They found Daniel and Mira's balloon buried in the woods. Police say it was deliberately hidden. Nona's reply came almost immediately. "Oh my God, are you okay? What else did they find?" Lena quickly typed out the details of the morning's discovery. As an engineer, Nona often provided a logical, analytical perspective that complemented Lena's more emotional approach. "From what you're describing," Nona texted back, "it sounds like someone tampered with the hot air balloon, probably the burner valve if the dog could detect gas after all these years." "This wasn't just an accident, Lena. If the burner valve was rigged, whoever did it would have expected the balloon to crash and burn in the wilderness." "Could anyone have done that?" Lena asked. "Yes, but there's usually a thorough check before any flight. The most likely suspect would be whoever did the checkup that day." Lena realized how little she knew about her husband's business operations, despite occasionally visiting the headquarters. Daniel had always handled his work life separately, wanting home to be a sanctuary from business concerns. "Thank you for the insight," she texted Nona. "You're one of the strongest women I know, Lena. Take this one step at a time. I'm always here if you need me." The exchange with Nona had helped center her. With renewed determination, Lena quickly showered and changed into fresh clothes. When Lena came back downstairs, she found the living room and kitchen empty. Grant's laptop was open on the dining table, where he had also laid out a simple breakfast of toast, scrambled eggs, and sliced fruit. A pot of coffee sat steaming nearby. Through the back window, she spotted Grant on the porch, pacing as he spoke animatedly into his phone. Lena sat down at the table next to Grant's laptop and helped herself to some breakfast, pouring a cup of coffee to wash it down. As she ate in silence, a series of notification sounds suddenly chimed from the laptop beside her. At first, she paid no attention, focusing on her meal instead. But the notifications continued, one after another, like a cascade of digital raindrops. Out of the corner of her eye, Lena couldn't help but notice pop-up chat messages appearing in the corner of Grant's screen. She caught snippets of text, "What a pretty lady." "You're so lucky, man." "She's perfect. You deserve her." Lena frowned, momentarily puzzled. Her first thought was that perhaps Grant had uploaded a photo with his wife Melissa to social media, and these were comments from friends. But then she reconsidered. Why would Grant be posting personal photos on a day like this, when they'd just discovered such significant evidence in Daniel and Mira's case? Still, she reminded herself, it wasn't her business. Grant's online activities were his own, and she had no right to pry, even if the timing seemed odd. The back door opened, and Grant stepped inside, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Ah, there you are," he said, smiling at her. "All freshened up." "Thanks for making breakfast," Lena said, gesturing to the plate before her. "My pleasure." Grant closed his laptop quickly and began gathering his things. That was the head office on the phone. "I need to leave soon to take care of the insurance matters. You should finish your breakfast and rest today. It's been an emotional morning." Lena set down her coffee cup. "Actually, I'd like to come with you to the office. It's been a while since I visited. Not since last year, I think. After what we found this morning, I feel like I should understand more about Daniel's work." A flicker of something, surprise, concern, crossed Grant's face, but it was gone so quickly Lena wondered if she'd imagined it. He closed his laptop and slipped it into his bag. "That's not necessary," he said, his tone casual. "Nothing much is happening at headquarters these days. You'd be bored." "I insist," Lena said, surprising herself with her firmness. "Daniel used to take me at least once a year. After what we found this morning, I feel like I need to connect with his work again." Grant hesitated, then nodded. "All right, if you're sure. I'll take you to headquarters, but then I'll have to leave for the insurance company." "Thank you," Lena said, finishing the last of her coffee. She carried her plate to the sink while Grant packed up his belongings. Within minutes, they were heading out the door and back to Grant's SUV. As they drove toward the industrial park where Skyreach Balloons had its headquarters, Lena found herself glancing at Grant's profile, noting the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel. For the first time, she wondered if there might be more to her husband's oldest friend than she'd ever realized. Skyreach Balloons' headquarters was housed in a modern single-story building with large windows that overlooked a private airfield where the company's hot air balloons were launched. The parking lot was half empty when they arrived, with only a few employee vehicles scattered about. As they entered the main reception area, Grant immediately introduced Lena to his assistant, a young woman named Mia with short auburn hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Mia, this is Lena Rowe, Daniel's wife," Grant said. "She'd like a tour of the facility. Could you show her around while I take care of some urgent matters?" "Of course, Mr. Miles," Mia replied with a professional smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Rowe." Grant disappeared down a hallway toward his office, leaving Lena with Mia. The young woman guided her through the building, explaining the various departments and operations with practiced ease. "This is our customer service center," Mia said, showing Lena a room where several employees were answering phones and working at computers. "And through here is the design studio where we create the custom balloon patterns." As they walked, Lena found herself studying the photographs that lined the hallways, many featuring Daniel, smiling broadly as he posed with clients beside colorful balloons. Her heart ached at the sight of his familiar face. "Everyone here knows about your husband and daughter," Mia said quietly, noticing Lena's gaze on the photos. "It was a tragedy that affected the whole company." "They found the balloon this morning," Lena said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "Buried in the woods. The police think it wasn't an accident after all." Mia's face changed, her professional demeanor slipping momentarily to reveal something that looked almost like fear. I hadn't heard," she stammered. "How terrible." The tour continued, but Lena noticed that Mia seemed distracted now, her explanations becoming shorter and her responses to questions less detailed. When they reached the maintenance bay, a large hangar-like space where balloons were repaired and serviced, Mia rushed through the explanation of the equipment and procedures. "This is where we perform all maintenance and safety checks," she said, gesturing vaguely around the space. "Each balloon is thoroughly inspected before and after every flight." "Do you think anyone here might have had something against my husband? Like, maybe someone tampered with the burner's valve?" Mia shrugged, silent for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice soft with uncertainty. "Everyone loves Daniel, especially little Mira. I can't imagine anyone doing something so awful. Why would you think that?" I don't know," she said, hesitating. "It's just a thought, an observation from the investigation this morning." Lena was about to ask about the safety protocols when Mia abruptly cut the tour short. "Let me show you to our client lounge," she said, leading Lena back toward the main building. "You can wait there comfortably." "Actually, I'd prefer to see Daniel's office," Lena said. A flicker of panic crossed Mia's face. "I'm sorry, but the room is locked. It has been for a long time. Only Mr. Miles has the key, and he's no longer in the office." Before Lena could question this, Mia's phone buzzed. The young woman checked it quickly, her expression growing tense. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Rowe, but I'm needed elsewhere. Would you mind waiting in the lounge? There's a TV and some travel magazines on the shelves. I'll come back for you shortly." Without waiting for a response, Mia turned and led the way. Lena trailed behind her until they reached the guest lounge. It was empty. Without much explanation, Mia hurried off, already speaking into her phone as she disappeared down the hall. From the doorway, Lena caught snippets of her conversation. "Police? Tomorrow?" Then, "Safety." And finally, "Client? Coming." Alone in the lounge, Lena considered what she'd overheard. Detective Beckett had mentioned arranging a meeting with the company staff, but he hadn't provided a timeline. Perhaps they were already planning to visit tomorrow, and maybe Skyreach was expecting clients who shouldn't see the police presence? Lena reached for her phone, intending to call Detective Beckett for an update, but stopped herself. The detective was likely still at the excavation site, busy with the investigation. He would contact her when he had news. After waiting for nearly 20 minutes with no sign of Mia returning, Lena decided to explore on her own. She remembered the creative design department somewhere in the building, a place Daniel had particularly enjoyed showing her, where artists created the colorful patterns that adorned their balloons. She left the lounge and made her way through the corridors, passing the maintenance bay again and what appeared to be a storage room filled with equipment. As she approached the office area, she noticed that the door to Grant's office was ajar. Peering through the small window in the door, she was surprised to see not Grant, but Mia inside, frantically gathering files and documents, stuffing them into folders. Lena pushed the door open, knocking lightly to announce her presence. "Mia?" The young woman jumped, clutching a stack of papers tightly against her chest, her eyes wide with alarm. "Mrs. Rowe, I was just about to come find you." "What are you doing?" Lena asked, stepping into the office. "Mr. Miles called and said he forgot an important document," Mia explained, her voice higher than normal. He asked me to find it, scan it, and send it to him. It's just insurance-related paperwork. But as Mia shifted the papers in her arms, Lena caught sight of what appeared to be a handwritten logbook labeled Fuel Reports. On the floor beside Mia was a cardboard box with Archive printed on the side, but someone had hastily scrawled Discard next to it in black marker. Lena's gaze was drawn to a folder visible on top of the box contents. In bold, large font, it read, Repair and Maintenance Log, April 2017, the month and year when Daniel and Mira had disappeared. "Why do you still have these documents?" Lena asked, her voice growing firm. "I remember the police requested all maintenance records back when they first investigated the disappearance." Mia's face paled. These are just scanned copies of the originals that were given to the police," she stammered, not meeting Lena's eyes. "I really need to finish this task, Mrs. Rowe. If you'll excuse me." Lena stepped back, allowing Mia to hurry past her with the document still clutched to her chest. As she watched the young woman practically run down the hallway, a sense of unease settled over her. Something seemed not right at Skyreach Balloons. Still troubled by Mia's suspicious behavior, Lena continued her self-guided tour of the headquarters. She made her way toward what she remembered as the creative design section, hoping to reconnect with the part of the business that Daniel had most loved to share with her. As she walked down a corridor lined with framed photographs of colorful balloons soaring over picturesque landscapes, she overheard two male employees talking in hushed tones around the corner. "The client's schedule has been moved to today," one was saying. "They're expecting him in less than an hour." "So soon?" the other replied, sounding concerned. "Client's not happy, but Grant doesn't have many options. Tomorrow the police will be here, and he wants everything settled by today. So remember, focus on the clients and get rid of those boxes." The men rounded the corner and fell silent when they spotted Lena. They nodded politely as they passed her, but their expressions were tense, almost guilty. Just as they disappeared down the hall, Lena's phone rang. It was Detective Beckett. She quickly answered, stepping away from the main corridor into a small alcove with a water fountain. "Mrs. Rowe," the detective said, his voice grave, "we've found additional evidence on the hot air balloon. There are signs of restraints being used, indications of a physical struggle inside the basket, and what appears to be a weapon of some kind. We also found clear evidence of sabotage on both the burner valve and the deflation port." Lena's heart pounded. "What does that mean?" "It means this was definitely not an accident. Additionally, we've continued to excavate the area and have found what appear to be human bone fragments buried deeper in the ground." She leaned against the wall for support. "You think someone killed them?" "We strongly suspect someone from the company was involved. We're arranging to interview the entire staff tomorrow morning." There was a brief pause. "Where are you now, Mrs. Rowe?" "I'm at Skyreach headquarters with Grant. Well, he's somewhere in the building. His assistant gave me a tour." "Grant Miles is our primary person of interest right now," Detective Beckett said, his voice dropping lower. "Along with whoever was working in the maintenance bay when your husband and daughter took that flight." Lena felt as though the floor was tilting beneath her feet. Grant? But he was Daniel's best friend. "I need you to come to the station right away," the detective continued. "We have evidence to show you." "I'm actually at the headquarters now," Lena said, watching an employee hurry past with a stack of files. "Grant's not here at the moment. He said he had to take care of insurance matters." "But there's something strange going on here. The staff seems nervous, unsettled." "Listen to me carefully, Mrs. Rowe," Detective Beckett said, his voice sharp with urgency. "I want you to leave immediately. Do not spend another minute there, and do not meet with Grant for now. Do you understand? I'll send some of my officers there, just to check around." "Yes," Lena whispered, suddenly afraid. After ending the call, Lena headed toward the main exit, her mind reeling. Grant, who had been like family to them, was a suspect? It seemed impossible, and yet The memory of his strange behavior that morning, the lack of grief, the secretive phone calls, the laptop notifications, Mia's suspicious actions with the files. It all began to form a troubling pattern. As she approached the front of the building, Lena spotted Grant through a window. He was outside in the parking lot, standing beside a company buggy with 3 men. 2 of them wore black suits and sunglasses. The third, who appeared to be the driver, was the same employee she had overheard in the hallway earlier. Grant handed what appeared to be an envelope to the men, who checked its contents, what looked like cash, before climbing into a trailing jeep with the driver and pulling away. Lena quickly stepped back from the window, pressing herself against the wall to avoid being seen. What kind of transaction was that? Surely any business related to the company's products would be processed through official channels transferred directly into the company's account. The thought unsettled her. She could hardly believe she was hiding from Grant, a man she had trusted implicitly for years. But Detective Beckett's warning echoed in her mind, sharp and persistent. She watched as Grant re-entered the building, his face drawn and stressed, and headed toward his office. Once he was out of sight, Lena turned her attention back to the trail jeep. It had stopped at a loading dock where a small box truck was parked. The men were speaking with another employee, who then walked toward the truck. Several staff members were loading boxes into the vehicle, boxes that looked identical to the one labeled discard that she had seen in Grant's office. The realization hit her hard. They were disposing of evidence before the police arrived tomorrow. Whatever had happened to Daniel and Mira, it's likely the case that Grant and his employees were actively covering it up. Lena knew she should follow Detective Beckett's instructions, leave immediately or wait for the officers and ask for their help. But something held her back. What if those men knew where Mira was? What if they were about to vanish with the very evidence that could lead her to her daughter before the police even arrived? She watched as the box truck's rear doors slammed shut and the driver climbed into the cab. The trail jeep was already gone. Heart pounding, Lena made a split-second decision and darted across the parking lot, glancing into each vehicle as she passed. Finally, she found an unlocked pickup truck. She yanked the door open, quickly scanned the interior, and there they were, the keys sitting in the glove compartment. Her heart pounding, Lena started the engine and drove out of the lot, keeping a distance from the box truck but not letting it out of her sight. At a traffic light, she finally caught up enough to maintain visual contact without being conspicuous. "I'm sorry, Detective," she whispered to herself as she followed the truck, "but I have to know." The box truck led her about 20 miles out of town, eventually turning onto a gravel road that wound through thick forest before opening onto an abandoned farmstead. There was no sign or name marking the property, just a weathered farmhouse, a large barn, and several smaller outbuildings, all in various states of disrepair. Lena watched as the truck pulled around behind the barn, out of sight from the main road. The trail jeep from earlier was already parked there, though the men in suits were nowhere to be seen. Keeping a safe distance, Lena parked the pickup truck on an overgrown access road about a quarter-mile from the farm. She killed the engine and sat for a moment, considering her options. The rational part of her brain screamed that she should drive away, call Detective Beckett, and let the police handle this. But something deeper, a mother's instinct perhaps, compelled her forward. She exited the truck and made her way cautiously toward the farm, staying within the tree line to avoid being spotted. Finding a dense cluster of bushes about 50 yards from the barn, she crouched down, pulled out her phone, and sent a text to Detective Beckett. "I followed a truck from Skyreach to an abandoned farm. Men loading boxes, acting suspicious. I'm hiding nearby. GPS coordinates attached." The detective's response came quickly. "Leave immediately. Drive far away. Police will inspect. This is extremely dangerous." Lena was about to reply when movement from the barn caught her attention. The drivers she had seen earlier emerged first, heading back to their vehicles. Then came the 2 men in suits and sunglasses, but they weren't alone. Between them, they half-carried, half-dragged a young woman. Her eyes were blindfolded, her hands bound in front of her. Despite the years that had passed, despite the changes that time and hardship had wrought, Lena would have recognized her anywhere. Mira, her daughter, was alive. Lena's breath caught in her throat, a strangled sound that she quickly muffled with her hand. Tears blurred her vision as she watched the men lead Mira to the box truck and roughly guide her inside. With trembling fingers, she sent another desperate text to Detective Beckett. "My daughter is here. Alive. They're moving her. Please hurry. There are at least 4 men here." The men continued to work, bringing boxes out from the barn and loading them into the truck. Lena wanted nothing more than to rush forward to rescue her child, but she knew she would be overpowered immediately. Her only hope was to wait for the police and pray they arrived in time. Just as the men appeared to finish their loading, a familiar silver SUV came roaring up the driveway. Grant's vehicle. He screeched to a halt in front of the barn and leaped out, his face contorted with fury. "Lena!" he shouted into the empty yard. "I know you're here somewhere. Come out now." The men by the truck and jeep froze, clearly surprised by Grant's arrival and outburst. "What's going on?" one of the suited men demanded. "Why are you here? Who are you looking for?" "A woman named Lena," Grant snapped, gesturing to several men who had arrived with him in another vehicle. "She was at headquarters earlier, and now she's disappeared. Someone spotted one of our pickup trucks leaving the lot, and security footage confirmed it was her behind the wheel. The GPS signal from that truck cut off in this area." He pointed up the road. "She parked it up there on the access road. She must be hiding somewhere around here, watching us. Find her." The suited men exchanged glances. "We don't have time for this," one said coldly. "We're here for the girl, as arranged. Your problems are not our concern." Grant ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Fine, take her. Johnson, Riley, you drive the jeep and truck. The rest of you, spread out and find Lena. She can't have gone far." Lena pressed herself lower to the ground as the box truck's engine roared to life. She watched helplessly as the vehicle containing her daughter pulled away from the barn, followed closely by the trail jeep. She wanted desperately to follow them, but Grant's men were already fanning out across the property, searching methodically through the brush. She needed to move. Staying as low as possible, she began to crawl away from her hiding spot, seeking denser cover. A twig snapped beneath her knee, the sound seemingly amplified in the quiet afternoon. "Over there!" Grant called, his voice much closer than Lena had realized. "I heard something." Lena froze, hardly daring to breathe. "Whatever you think you're doing here is useless, Lena," Grant called out, his voice taking on a taunting edge. "Your daughter isn't yours anymore, and soon no one will ever find her again. Come out now, and maybe we can work something out." She could hear him moving steadily closer, the rustle of his footsteps through the underbrush unmistakable. Glancing around desperately, she spotted a denser thicket about 20 feet away. If she could reach it without being seen, she might have a better chance of escaping. Grant's footsteps grew louder, crunching through fallen leaves and breaking small branches. Lena could see him now through gaps in the foliage, methodically sweeping the area, a pistol held ready in his right hand. His face, once so familiar and trusted, was now a mask of cold determination that sent shivers down her spine. "You're only making this harder on yourself," he called out, gesturing to his men to close in from different angles. "We've been friends for years, Lena. Let's talk this through like adults." Lena knew she couldn't stay where she was. Grant was systematically closing in on her position, and his men were converging from other directions. With agonizing slowness, she began to inch toward the denser thicket she had spotted, moving only when the rustling of wind through the trees might mask the sounds of her movement. But her caution wasn't enough. As she shifted position, her foot disturbed a cluster of dry leaves, creating a soft but distinct sound in the quiet forest. Grant's head snapped in her direction, a cold smile spreading across his face. "There you are," he said quietly, raising his gun and moving directly toward her hiding spot. He gestured to his men, pointing them toward where Lena was concealed. She knew she had seconds, not minutes, before they would be upon her. But just as Grant took another step forward, the distant wail of police sirens cut through the air. Grant froze, his expression shifting from confident to alarmed. "Damn it," he cursed, lowering his weapon slightly. "Everyone back to the cars, now. Move it before the police get here." His men didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled back toward the farmyard, abandoning their search for Lena. Grant lingered a moment longer, scanning the brush one last time, then turned and ran toward his SUV. Within moments, engines roared to life, and the vehicles tore out of the farmyard, spraying gravel as they accelerated down the driveway. Lena remained hidden until she was certain they were gone, then cautiously emerged from the undergrowth, just as her phone began to ring. It was Detective Beckett. "Where are you?" he demanded when she answered. "Are you safe?" "I'm at the farm," Lena said, her voice shaking. "Grant and his men just left when they heard the sirens. They have Mira, Detective. She's alive, and they took her in a box truck." "Stay where you are. What direction did they go?" "East on the main road. Grant was in his silver SUV. There's also a box truck and a trail jeep. My daughter is in the truck. She's blindfolded, and they're taking her away." "We have units in pursuit," the detective assured her. "Stay put until we get to you." Lena ended the call and broke into a run, heading toward the main road. She had to see what was happening, had to know if they would rescue Mira in time. As she reached the road, she saw police cruisers speeding past, lights flashing and sirens blaring. In the distance, she could make out Grant's SUV, now boxed in by police vehicles that had cut off his escape. More police cars continued down the road, presumably in pursuit of the truck and jeep carrying Mira. Lena ran toward the roadblock where Grant was being detained, her heart pounding in her chest. As she approached, she saw officers with weapons drawn, ordering Grant and his men out of the SUV. One by one, they emerged with their hands raised, then were forced to kneel on the ground as officers handcuffed them. Grant's face contorted with rage when he spotted Lena approaching. He spat on the ground as officers led him toward a police cruiser. "How could you?" Lena cried, anger and grief overwhelming her as she confronted the man who had been like family. "You were like family to us. What did we ever do to you?" An officer stepped between them, gently holding Lena back. But Grant's response cut through the chaos, his voice cold and filled with venom. "I hated all of you," he snarled. "The company was supposed to be mine. Daniel didn't deserve a single cent of it." Before Lena could respond, officers pushed Grant into the back of a police car and slammed the door. Detective Beckett approached, his expression grim but determined. "My men have intercepted the truck and jeep," he said. "They've secured your daughter. She's safe, Mrs. Rowe." Lena's knees nearly buckled with relief. "Take me to her," she pleaded. "Please." The detective nodded and guided her to his unmarked vehicle. As they drove, he updated her on what was happening. "We're searching the farmhouse and barn for additional evidence. Initial reports suggest they were using the property as a base of operations for some time." He glanced at Lena. "Your daughter is with paramedics now. They're evaluating her condition." When they arrived at the intercept point about 5 miles down the road, Lena saw the box truck pulled over on the shoulder, surrounded by police vehicles. The men who had been transporting Mira were in handcuffs, sitting on the ground under police guard. And there, on the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket and being attended to by paramedics, was Mira. She looked so different, no longer the 11-year-old child who had disappeared, but a young woman of 17. Her face was thinner, her eyes older, holding shadows no teenager should have to bear. But when she looked up and saw Lena, recognition bloomed instantly. "Mom," she called, her voice breaking. Lena ran to her, and they collided in an embrace so fierce it seemed they might never let go. They cried together, clinging to each other as 6 years of separation crashed over them like a wave. "I missed you so much," Mira sobbed into her mother's shoulder. "I thought I'd never see you again." "I never stopped looking, never stopped hoping," Lena whispered, stroking her daughter's hair. When they finally pulled apart, the paramedics insisted on continuing their evaluation of Mira. As they worked, Mira began to tell her story in halting sentences. "Dad and I were supposed to be gone for 3.5 hours that day," she began, her voice small but determined. "The flight was fine at first, beautiful even. But when we got far, something went wrong with the balloon. Dad tried to fix it, but he said it was too late." Tears streamed down her face as she continued. "We crashed in the woods. Dad protected me during the landing, but he was badly hurt when we hit some tall trees. The balloon got tangled, but we were alive. We called for help, and men came with Grant. We thought they were there to rescue us." Her voice broke, and she clutched her mother's hand tightly. "But instead, they took us. Grant, he killed Dad. He said Dad wasn't worthy of the company, that the company was his, that he was the one who worked hard for it, while Dad just put his face everywhere." Mira's body shook with suppressed sobs. "Dad begged him to at least save me. He kept saying they built the company together, but Grant wouldn't listen. He killed him right there while Dad was still begging for my life." Lena held her daughter close, her own tears flowing freely. "What did they do to you after that?" Mira's face crumpled, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They took me to that abandoned farm and locked me underground in the storm cellar. Grant, he used me. For himself at first, for years. Then recently, he started taking me to different places. I was always drugged. He let other men use me, too." Her gaze dropped to her hands, which were trembling. "He also took pictures of me. I heard the men talking about how much money a single photo brought in, how their boss was making a good profit." Lena's blood ran cold as fragments of the notification snippets she'd seen on Grant's laptop that morning flashed through her mind. A wave of nausea hit her. Had he really uploaded something from her home right after they'd uncovered the evidence? The thought made her stomach churn. He had shown no remorse. She turned to Detective Beckett, who had been standing nearby, and told him about the messages. The detective immediately radioed his colleagues, who were searching the Skyreach headquarters. "Check Miles's laptop for explicit photos of the victim, both online and offline," he instructed. After a brief exchange, he turned back to Lena. "They've found the laptop and confirmed there are explicit images distributed through an online channel called Private Collection VIP." The paramedics interrupted to inform them that Mira needed to be transported to the hospital for a more thorough examination. Lena didn't hesitate. "I'm coming with her," she said firmly, climbing into the ambulance beside her daughter. As the doors closed and the ambulance pulled away, Lena held Mira's hand tightly, vowing silently that she would never let her go again. The emergency room at Eldon Murray General Hospital was a blur of activity as Mira was admitted. Doctors and nurses moved efficiently around her, checking vital signs, drawing blood for tests, and conducting preliminary examinations. Lena was asked to wait outside while they performed a more thorough evaluation. In the sterile hospital corridor, Lena sank into a molded plastic chair, her body finally acknowledging the exhaustion of the day. She pulled out her phone and called Nona, desperately needing to share the incredible developments with someone who would understand. "Lena, what's happening?" Nona answered immediately, concern evident in her voice. "They found her, Nona," Lena said, her voice breaking. "Mira is alive. She's in the hospital now, being examined." "Oh my God," Nona gasped. "How? Where?" Lena recounted the events of the day, the discovery of the balloon, her suspicions at Skyreach headquarters, following the truck to the abandoned farm, and the police rescue of Mira. She explained Grant's betrayal and the horrific treatment her daughter had endured. "You were right about the balloon being sabotaged," she concluded. "It was Grant all along. He wanted the company for himself." "What about that online channel you mentioned?" Nona asked, her voice tight with anger. "The police are already taking it down," Lena assured her. "They're moving quickly on this." After promising to update Nona on Mira's condition, Lena ended the call. The emotional weight of the day crashed over her, and she leaned her head back against the wall, closing her eyes briefly. She didn't realize she had fallen asleep until a gentle hand on her shoulder roused her. A doctor in a white coat was standing over her, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Rowe, I'm Dr. Patel. I've been examining your daughter." Lena sat up straight, immediately alert. "How is she?" Dr. Patel's expression was compassionate, but serious. "Physically, she's suffering from malnutrition and dehydration, which we're addressing with IV fluids and a nutrition plan. She also has an infection in her reproductive system, likely due to the abuse she endured. We've started her on antibiotics for that." The doctor hesitated, then continued more gently. "The psychological trauma is substantial, Mrs. Rowe. We've called in a specialist who works with survivors of long-term captivity and sexual abuse. Your daughter will need extensive therapy and support." Lena nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Can I see her now?" "Yes, but she's heavily sedated. She needs rest." Lena was about to follow the doctor when Detective Beckett appeared in the hallway. "Mrs. Rowe, I need to speak with you first if you don't mind," he said. "It won't take long." With a reluctant nod to the doctor, Lena followed the detective to a small consultation room. Inside, he gestured for her to sit, then placed a folder on the table between them. "I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to tell you earlier," he began, opening the folder to reveal official-looking documents. "The preliminary DNA tests on the bone fragments we found at the excavation site have been completed. They confirm what your daughter told us. The remains belong to your husband, Daniel." Despite having already heard it from Mira, the official confirmation hit Lena like a physical blow. She covered her face with her hands, allowing herself a moment to absorb the finality of it. Daniel was truly gone, murdered by the man he had trusted most. "We've uncovered more evidence in our search of both the farm and Skyreach headquarters," Detective Beckett continued, giving Lena time to compose herself. "From what we can tell, the accident was planned well in advance. Grant had been tracking weather patterns and convinced several trusted employees to help sabotage the balloon that morning. He apparently promised them larger salaries once Daniel was out of the picture. He slid several photographs across the table, images of the balloon's damaged equipment, the excavation site, and documents seized from Skyreach. Grant manipulated everything, the detective explained. The balloon's GPS was disabled and removed. The crash site was deliberately far off the expected trajectory in a section of the forest that's restricted to civilians. When we conducted the initial search 6 years ago, we were working with flight logs that had been tampered with, focusing our efforts in completely the wrong area." Lena shook her head in disbelief. All because he wanted the company? Daniel built that company. He let Grant join him as a partner because they were friends. He trusted him completely. According to statements we've already obtained from some of Grant's employees, he was resentful of your husband's public role. While Grant handled the operations, Daniel was the face of the company, the one clients knew and trusted. Grant wanted that recognition and a larger share of the profits. "He doesn't even have a family," Lena said bitterly. "What did he need all that money and fame for? And to do what he did to Mira?" The detective's expression darkened. "The trafficking angle is something we're still investigating. Based on evidence found at the farm and on Grant's devices, it appears he initially kept Mira for his own purposes. In recent years, he began exploiting her more broadly through this online channel, which catered to very wealthy clients willing to pay substantial sums for exclusive content." "The men at the farm today?" "Connected to an international trafficking ring we've been tracking for some time. With the police investigation closing in, Grant was rushing to tie up loose ends, disposing of evidence and transferring Mira to these men who would have taken her out of the country." Lena remembered the conversation she'd overheard at Skyreach. They mentioned a client who was coming today instead of tomorrow because the police would be there. Detective Beckett nodded. We believe Grant accelerated their timeline when he realized we'd found the balloon. He wanted no loose ends before we arrived to interview the staff. They discussed the charges Grant would face: first-degree murder, kidnapping, human trafficking, child exploitation, evidence tampering, and more, as well as the arrangements for Daniel's proper burial once the forensic examination was complete. When they finished, the detective walked Lena back toward Mira's room. We'll need formal statements from both of you in the coming days, he said. But for now, just be with your daughter. She needs you more than anything. Outside Mira's door, Lena paused. Thank you, she said sincerely, for not giving up on the case, even after all these years. The detective smiled sadly. That's my job, Mrs. Rowe. I'm just sorry it took us so long to uncover the truth. Inside the hospital room, Mira was lying in bed, her eyes closed, an IV dripping fluids into her arm. She looked so fragile, so young despite the years that had stolen her childhood. Lena approached quietly, not wanting to disturb her rest, but Mira's eyes fluttered open at the sound of footsteps. Mom, she whispered, reaching out a hand. Lena took it immediately, sitting on the edge of the bed. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. Mira's eyes filled with tears. Is it really over? Am I really free? Yes, Lena assured her, stroking her daughter's hair. Grant and his men are in custody. They can never hurt you again. You're safe now. I never thought I'd see you again, Mira admitted, her voice breaking. After a while, I started to believe what they told me, that you had forgotten about me, moved on with your life. Never, Lena said fiercely. I never stopped looking for you, never stopped hoping. Every single day, I thought about you and your father, wondered where you were, if you were alive. They held each other, mother and daughter reunited after an unimaginable separation. The road to healing would be long and difficult. There would be trials, testimonies, therapy sessions, nightmares, and countless challenges as Mira adjusted to freedom and Lena learned how to parent a traumatized teenager instead of the 11-year-old she had lost. But in that moment, in the quiet hospital room with the afternoon sun slanting through the blinds, there was only gratitude for the chance to begin again, for the miracle of finding each other after so many years of darkness. We'll get through this together, Lena promised, holding her daughter close. One day at a time. Mira nodded against her shoulder, and for the first time in 6 years, she allowed herself to believe in a future beyond captivity, a life reclaimed from the shadows. Together, she echoed softly. That's all I ever wanted. Then together is where we'll start.